Good evening, everyone. So Daya, are we live? I haven't seen the countdown. Can you hear me, Councilwoman Surgeon? Okay.
Yes, I can, ma'am.
Okay.
It's 5:31, so we must be live.
Yeah, I haven't gotten the countdown from Hartford Public Access. Saida, do you just want to press record just in case? Thank you.
Oh, she said sure can. Okay.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. This is the regularly scheduled OMBGA.
Recording in progress.
Great. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here with us this evening. This is the regularly scheduled Operations Management, Budget, and Government Accountability, also known as OMBGA committee, and I'm calling this committee to order at 5:31. With us this evening, and I'm going to just say their names as I see them on the screen: Councilwoman Shirley Surgeon, Councilman John Gale. I know that Majority Clark will be joining us soon. I also see Councilwoman Tiana Hercules, Councilman Nick LeBron, Corporation Counsel Howard Rifkin, members of HPA-TV. I also see Tone Nelson and let's see who else. I thought I saw Aaron. So apologies if I don't see everyone on the screen. Hi, Aaron, how are you? So this evening, we're gonna do things a little bit different where we are adding an item to the agenda, and FOI meeting notes state that if it's a regular scheduled meeting, that by form of motion, you can add an item to the agenda, which is what we're gonna be doing this evening. So I will be entertaining a motion to add to this agenda item 2.6, which is the ground lease at 270 Albany Avenue.
So move.
Second.
So who
John moved it, Shirley second.
Thank you. So a motion has been made and properly second to add item 2.6 to this evening's agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Voting
Aye.
members, aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any nays? The ayes have it. The item has been added to the agenda. Thank you, everyone. And without further ado, this evening, we have item 2.1, which is Mayor Bonin with a company ordinance making general fund appropriations to reflect project costs relative to public improvements in the McDonald Middle School. Who do we have from the administration that will be talking about this?
Madam Council President.
Yes.
This is Paul Drummy, the Director of Capital Projects and Operations.
Hi.
Hello. Would you like me to continue?
Yes, you have the floor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So good evening, everyone, or good afternoon, everyone. So I'm here to give an update on the appropriations for Parkville, Moylan, and McDonough. As this committee is aware that you know, since June of 2022, the city has worked hard to get these 3 schools on the priority list. Throughout that time period, June to October, December, there were different variations of the project budgets that our consultants were working back and forth with the Office of School Construction Grants toward a final number that made sense and could be put on the priority list. And those numbers are before you tonight. For McDonough, we're respectfully asking that the ordinances be changed to 59,859,491 for McDonough that match the priority list. For Moyland, it would be 94571,305. And for Parkville, it would be 60888,341 with a total appropriation amount of 215,319,137. Are there any questions?
Yes.
So,
Through you.
Councilwoman Surgeon, so Paul, you know, this, I know that you gave a capture of all of the schools, but we actually have them in separate items, item 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3.
My apology.
Councilman, I'm sorry, Corporation Counsel, would we be able to combine all three of them? Because I believe, Paul, you're reporting on all three of them, correct?
Yes.
Through you, there are three separate ordinances, but I think it would be more than appropriate for this committee to take all three at the same time and send it back to council. But at the council meeting itself, you will have to take them up and vote on each ordinance separately.
Okay. Wonderful. So when we do the motion at the end, we can just include the motion with all three items to send back to council. Correct?
Yes, as I would suggest, as amended.
Correct.
By by the numbers that Mr. Treme was just providing the council members.
Yes, and we will go back to him before we make that motion to.
So through you, Madam Chair, so should we not get an amended resolution? He's asking it to be amended on the floor, and he's rattled off some numbers. Shouldn't we have something in writing?
Well, we will have something in writing from the administration before, I believe, tomorrow afternoon, so that when we have at the council meeting, we will have that in place. So I would make the recommendation at the end to do the amendment, you know, with the agreement that we will get the revised amounts. Go ahead, Councilman Gale.
Yeah. I'm wondering if we can just ask Paul to put the numbers in the chat.
Exactly.
So that, if you can just send those numbers to us in the chat, then we can I can make a motion to amend and to send them back favorably with the amended numbers, and I'll have something to read from.
Councilman Gale, would you want me to share my screen?
Yes.
Would that be helpful?
Yeah, either way. I think to Councilwoman Surgeon's point, this body needs something. We love hearing your voice, but I think we didn't all write fast enough when you were reciting those numbers.
Right. So even though you're gonna share, if you could just put it in the chat.
Okay. So apologies for, I can try to put it in the chat. I'm just not certain how to do so. So I will work toward that.
Okay.
Actually,
no. So we see it. So put it back.
Go ahead. Yeah. Actually, John, if you can take a picture of that and then just
right, exactly. So we can read that.
Thank you for that.
If you could just take a picture with your phone and then you can read the amendment as for this display.
So Paul, when I'm looking at this, so there's a decrease.
The
original amounts.
The original one back in June of 2022, yes. But there was also, my understanding in getting caught up on this is in October of 2022, there was a one for a reduced amount. And now in January, after we've made the priority list, these three schools are now on, and these are definitive numbers. We're asking to change that amount to the 215, 319, 137 in totality.
Okay, 341. So it's 215. 319. And has the school building committee approved this?
Has the building committee approved this?
Yeah, the 215.
I do not believe they have. I haven't been part of any approvals through the committee.
If I can, through you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I don't think the school building committee needs to approve. This would be a change to the numbers provided to the council in both the original ordinance and then a proposed second or amended ordinance that is reflected in the October 22 column, for which there was a, well, there were two separate hearings, one for that which is provided as of June 2022 and October, and another one, October 2022. This is all part of a negotiation that took place between the city and the Department of Administrative Services for the construction dollars that, as Paul mentioned, ultimately was approved for the priority list as approved by the General Assembly. So, so I think what is necessary for the council, this has been sitting around for a while, is to approve the substitute numbers, or for this committee, recommend these favorably to the council, and then the ordinances that would be considered at your next meeting would be substitute ordinances where the dollar amounts would be reflective of that last column in the spreadsheet noted January 23, if that makes sense.
I think so, Howard. I'm trying to wrap it around my brain. So the process is through you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry. I'm trying to. So the city negotiates with DAS to come up with the amount. And so the school building committee has no, they accept what the amount is, and that's how they're going to build the school on the new amount?
Yes.
Okay, got you. All right.
Do you,
thank you,
Madam Chair. Yes. So I'm sorry for my tardiness. Yes. So what we do, the school building committee does not do any negotiation with the Office of School Construction and Grants. That's handled totally by the city administration and the and the state. And so whatever the approved budget is, that's what we take over, and then we go with that approved budget. And within that approved budget falls in the amount of money that's will be allocated for the CM, which is the construction manager, the architect, and everything else that falls within those budgets. I got you back, Paul.
Thank you, Councilman.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the
Council President has stepped aside for just a moment.
All right.
And has asked me to temporary chair, although I see Councilman Clark, you're here. You're an actual co-chair. So why don't you take over until she comes back?
Right. Thank you, Councilman. So yeah, so are there, do we need just some time to go over the amended numbers?
I understand the numbers. It's interesting that they some went up and then down.
Yeah.
Others went down and then up.
Yeah.
But the end number is not far off from the original June number.
Right. I'm good.
And just to put things into more of a context, at some point after all this gets approved, we're going to have around 11 schools being renovated at the same time in our city, which is the first time, I believe, in its history since the reconstruction renovation process has been going on in the city of Hartford.
So this means that Paul is going to be a very busy guy, along with Councilman Clark, who sits on the school building committee.
Yes, we are busy at work now with the 3 schools that we have in the pipeline. So this is just going to be adding to, the beautification process of our school system.
Well, we love the beautification aspect of it, but let me do my math. Adding 8 to your present 3 is increasing your workload by 2 2/3. So that's a 267% increase in your workload.
Yeah, and we're still going to figure out a way to manage it all, right, Paul?
That is accurate.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just had a quick question with respect to that. Because I know that some of the renovations require schools, fully shutting down and students relocating and being temporarily placed in other schools. Would any of these projects require that, or?
I think that's too soon to tell. But Paul, I don't know if you know offhand just yet.
Sure. These will be occupied while they're being renovated, similar to Burns Latino that is currently being renovated.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Councilman Gale, if you have those numbers.
Sure.
Would you make I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, would it be appropriate for us to, to put a motion on the floor?
Yes. So do you need me to, Councilman Gale can.
I think he took a picture of it. I didn't.
Yeah, well, it's still up on my screen, but
I'm sorry,
I didn't see that. I did take a picture of it, but it's still up on the screen, thankfully. So I'll leave it right there.
Yes, McDonough is $59,859,491. Moylan is $94,571,305, and Parkville is $60,888,341.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, I think to Councilwoman Surgeon's request, I'll make a motion that we amend respectively each of the ordinances that are before us with respect to these schools to change the numbers to the new numbers that you just recited, so that the amendment is to change the amount for McDonough to the $59,859,491, to change the number for Moylan to $94,571,305, and to change the number for Parkville to $60,888,341.
Motion's been made by Councilman Gale to amend the ordinance with the reflective amounts, new amounts. Just a slight clarification, is 59 million instead of 59,000 for McDonough?
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
59,859,491. And let me say that the motion is to amend and to send back favorably to council as amended.
Right.
And Councilman Gale, in the resolution, there was a total budget of, you may have to mention the new budget of 215. I'm looking at the resolution.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just let me, excuse me.
Yes, sir.
What you're proposing to amend are the ordinances for each individual school with the dollar amount reflected.
Okay.
And so they would be taken up at the next council meeting sequentially and not reference the total amount. That total amount in that spreadsheet is for purposes of the council understanding in totality what the dollars are that will be appropriated for purposes of these three schools.
Thank you, Mr. Corporation Counsel.
Corporation Counsel.
So the motion has been made by Councilman Gale with the amendment, and also to send it back with a favorable recommendation to council.
And Mr. Chair, if I may have one question for, I guess probably for Corp Counsel on this, and that is if we know what percentage or what our expectation is as the percentage reimbursement on each of these school projects.
I believe that they all are qualified for the 95%, but
95%.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Second.
All right, motion's been made and it's been by Councilman Gale, second by Councilwoman Surgeon. Is there any questions on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposals? Any abstentions? Hearing or seeing none, this motion has passed. Thank you very much. And thank you, Paul, for your presentation, your first time around.
You're welcome. Good night, everyone.
All right, good night.
Bye now.
Okay, moving on, and please bear with me. I don't have the agenda up. Let me get it. If somebody has the agenda.
Yes, I have the agenda, Mr. Chair. And the next item on the agenda is item number 2.4, which is Council President Rosado, an ordinance amending Article 17 of Chapter 2. And I note that the Council President has had to excuse herself, so I'm assuming that this matter would just be postponed at this time, and I would so move that it be postponed.
Second.
Motion has been made to postpone item 2.4, and it's been seconded. Is any discussions on this? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. This item is postponed to the next OMBGA meeting. All right.
Next on your agenda, Mr. Chair, is item 2.5. Mayor Bronin with accompanying resolution authorizing 15-year tax abatement agreement for Phase 5 of Westbrook Village Rental Housing Development.
Thank you, Councilman Gill. And I do see Mr. Tone Nelson from the Department of Development Services.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
Good afternoon.
Members of the committee. Once again, we are before you and asking you to favorably recommend and approve and recommend the 15-year abatement for Phase 5 of the Westbrook redevelopment, currently being rebranded as the Village at Park River. In this particular phase, which is, I believe, is the fifth of 7. So one of the last of the phases to be presented to council for possibly presented to council for approval of an abatement. The developer is proposing to build 58 units, residential units, of which 45 of those units, I apologize, will be set aside for low income, reserved and restricted to people who earn 60% of area median income. In this case, if I can, I'd like to read through the resolution or the terms of the abatement as proposed. The abatement is for 15 years. It will begin once the first temporary certificate of occupancy is issued, or certificate of occupancy is issued. What that means is if they should occupy a unit and only 1/3 of the complex is completed, the city will still be able to collect taxes on that 1/3 of the complex that is currently rented. Secondly, the owner will pay taxes for a period of 15 years on all of the proposed units, which is 58 units there. In this case, the market rate units were previously excluded from the abated units. However, as a result of some of the anticipated increases in the property value, the mill rate, and expected taxes, and for predictability and accounting purposes for both the city and the developer, we have proposed that the market rate units be included in the abatement, resulting in a higher per tax per unit. If you'd like, I could read through. So for example, year 1 through year 3, they're going to pay a total of $73,000 per year, roughly $1,259.62 a unit. Year 4 through 7, $75,000 per year in its totality, $1,293.10 per unit. Years 8 through 10, $76,000 for $1,310.34 per unit. In years 11 through 15, they're going to pay $1,327.59 for a total of $77,022 per year. During the term of the abatement, all the units that must be affordable under the regulations will remain affordable for the term of the abatement. The owner will comply with all regulations ordinance based on the as written by the United States, the state of Connecticut, and the city of Hartford during the operation of the property. The tax abatement is non-assignable, non-transferable, or without approval from the city. The agreement, which is a clause that we've created, I would say maybe 4 or 5 years ago, will, in this agreement, the resolution requires that the abatement should automatically transfer to a bank or financier as a result of default if the developer fails to do what he or she proposes to do in terms of meeting their obligation. Upon any future sale and refinance during the term of the abatement, the city will be eligible to collect 10% of any net proceeds as a result of sale or recapture of equity. During the construction, the developer will comply with the HAP, also known as Article 12, Section 2-680, and they would be required to hire set aside at least 15% of the construction costs for certified, City of Hartford certified minority and women-owned businesses. 30% of all project work hours must be performed by Hartford residents, and 15% of all trade workers must be performed. All trade work must be performed by women or minority licensed trade folks. As part of the community benefit associated with this, which is also part of number 9, number 10 was added, where the developer will make a one-time contribution to the Department of Development Services to be used at its discretion for neighborhood development in the amount of $30,000. This is basically going to run, the payment will be due upon stabilization roughly. Stabilization meaning that once the construction is completed, the unit is somewhat occupied, the building is, all construction completed, and the building is now being occupied. In the case where the City of Hartford, if in the case of default, and the City of Hartford shall retain the right to cancel the agreement, and its remedy may include the payment of all taxes, all abated taxes. With that said, those are the terms of the abatement. I'd also like to mention that, as I said, this is the 5th phase that we present to OMB and Council for approval. Phase 1 being approved in 2018, Phase 2 approved in 2019, Phase 3 and 4 approved in 2022. The difference with this phase, as I mentioned in this resolution, is that we ask that all the market rate units be included under the abatement, and not just excluded or not excluded from the abatement as they have been with the previous abatements request. And if you should have any questions of me, I also believe that in the room is 2 members of the development staff, which is Rio Scanetti and Anthony Healis. So if you have any questions, Mr. Chair, be more than willing to answer those.
Thank you, Tone, for the presentation. I had a question regarding the $30,000 fund again. Can you just explain that?
Sure. What the city is now requiring, or I shouldn't say, what we've negotiated with in this particular phase is that as part of the community benefit, which what we've relied on in the past to be just that they comply with the HAP, that we ask that they provide additional funding to the Department of Development Services to be used at its discretion to assist with neighborhood development for some projects that may not be eligible for funding through some of the money that the city actually receives as part of its daily business.
So the neighborhood development is not classified under this housing project. It's the neighborhood development for the city of Hartford. That's a new budget line item for development services.
The city of Hartford, in particular, that particular neighborhood, so Blue Hills. Again, that is at the discretion of the Director of Development Services.
So there is, just so that I'm clear, since this project is in Blue Hills, and if Blue Hills has a neighborhood project that they would like to see, they can apply to or request these funds be released from development services that are applicable to development of a project in Blue Hills.
They can definitely make a request to the Director of Development Services for funding, for assistance at some level. Again, it would have to fit with the plan as devised by the director.
Yeah, okay. I got that. And now, so is this a policy that's now development services is requiring of all development now?
We've started doing this. I think this is the third or the fourth one, Mr. Chair, where we've requested additional funding. I shouldn't say fund, but we requested a community contribution to development services for this need. We are trying to make this a standard request in situations where projects and developers can afford to make such a contribution without hurting the project itself.
Okay. So I'm just, okay. Aaron, I see you want to chime in.
If you don't mind, and May.
Let's go right ahead.
Thank you, Councilman. I think these are things that we're trying to obviously do on the affordable housing for the tax abatements under affordable housing. So for clarity, in our development deals, as you all know, a lot of times the other deals that we have on the table have different challenges and different things that we try to do as it relates to the project. So I think it's fair to say that under the housing team for housing tax abatements on affordable housing, I do believe, as Tom mentioned, it is something that they are going to continue to push for because it has been successful in the past. And then on our end, we will, where appropriate, we will make those similar types of requests depending upon what community benefits may be tied to certain development deals and how the numbers shake out from those investments. So just for clarity.
Okay.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for that clarification. I'm supportive of this project. I think that it's been a great development in the Blue Hills community that also abuts Upper Albany, and it's been a great asset aesthetically, as well as far as a quality of life perspective too. So I look forward to the continued development of this Westbrook now, the Village at Park River project. Any questions from my colleagues? Councilman Gale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of questions, if I may. Mr. Nelson, can we assume that the tax rates here are comparable for this phase? That these what you've set forth here for these taxes to be paid through this 15 years is comparable to the taxes that are being paid on the units in phase 1 through 4?
My response.
I understand
your question. My response. I hesitate, Councilman, because one, in the previous phases, we did not include the market rate units under the abatement. So if I sat there and I looked at the market rate units and added those into the numbers that I anticipate collecting under the abatement, which I've done in the past, and I believe that's part of the reason why you asked is because I believe during the previous phase 4, I believe it was, I submitted a summary of or an analysis of the impact on those previous developments, and it appeared as if the numbers for the phase 4 that was before you at that time were very similar to those in the previous phases, including the market rate units. So I will say, to answer your question, yes, I do believe, well, when I look at it, let's just look at it this way. If I look at it and say the numbers for each unit here starts out at $1,300, I do know that taxes on some of the market rate units there are about $2,600, but when I average those units out with the affordable units, I will say, yeah, they're very similar. The numbers are very similar in terms of what we anticipate collecting on a whole.
And when you reference market rate units, the resolution in front of us talks about 58 units and 20% of them affordable to those earning no more than 120% of AMI. Are those 20% the units you're calling market rate?
That's what's generally referred to as the market rate, yes.
Got it. So that 20% would be, what is that, about 12 units then?
It is actually, I have the number here, Councilman, give me 1 second. So it's 12 units, yes.
Okay. And so the real tax then, and thank you for, you kind of anticipated my other question, which the real tax on these units would be about $2,600, give or take, and this is starting them at about $1,300. But even as you get into year 15, mm-hmm. It hasn't gone up by that much. It's a little bit above 1,300 if I'm understanding your table. So at the end of year 15, the owner of this project then is going to have a jump. They're going to go from paying taxes to their tax bill is, on this phase anyway, is essentially going to double, it seems to me. And I'm just wondering, do we anticipate that the developers will be able to absorb that cost at that point, that they've been planning for that all along, so that when you hit the 15th year, they don't come running back and go, oh my God, we're never going to survive if we have to pay these taxes?
Well, so yeah, so at the end of the term, so in the 16th year, basically what you're asking is at the 16th year, when the abatement expires, will they be in a position to meet their obligation to the city? Generally, the way these things work, Councilman, is a project like this will put together several reserves. So they'll have capital reserves, they'll have operating reserves, and then they'll have a third, which may be labeled as working capital. In this case, what the operating agreement requires them to do in many cases is anticipate the termination of this project or of this abatement. Therefore, they're in a position to meet those obligations as a result of full taxes by drawing down capital reserves or operating reserves, or maybe some additional contributions from the partners and the owners. A good example of that was Shepherd Park, where Shepherd Park had their abatement had expired. They went the one lapse year without an abatement of taxes, and they actually used the money out of their operating reserves accounts and some capital reserve accounts, and some of the owners forsaked any return and contributed money to cover any operating deficit as a result of full taxes due. So yes, to answer the question, they anticipate this and they generally prepare for it in advance.
Okay. All right. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, Councilman.
Councilwoman Surgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Tone, for the presentation. I do have to agree with you, Mr. Chair. The development is a neighbor of Upper Albany, and we are thoroughly enjoyed the new development that's come online from 2018. As a neighbor and driving by the development, and right across from Annie Fisher School, it certainly has made a difference in that neighborhood. So through you, Mr. Chair, I really want to see the remaining parcels get developed so we can really get back a lot of these properties back online.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other questions for Mr. Nelson, Development Services? Councilman Gill?
Sorry to come back for a second round, but
my pleasure.
I just wondering, since I see that we have representatives from the development team here, and I know that the last, I guess it's the last phase of this is the commercial phase. And I certainly share Councilwoman Surgeon's comments and the chair's comments. I drive by there frequently, and I enjoy seeing, you know, a whole new town essentially that's been created, and that's wonderful. But there is kind of this front part on Albany Avenue where we're still looking at a bunch of piles of dirt, and so I'm just wondering if and I know it's been difficult for the developer to find an anchor tenant and to nail down some of what we're all hoping to be some rather nice commercial space on Albany Avenue. So I'm just wondering if there's any update that can be shared with us today.
I'm sorry, Councilman. Let me say this. I am not familiar with that side of the development at this point in time. I do know that they're still pursuing tenants and the possibility of that happening. So the commercial development taking place. However, I am not privy. I'm not involved in a lot of those conversations. So unfortunately, I can't answer your question with 100% confidence on anything. Other than I can say, Councilwoman Surgeon, I would like to comment on your remark, which is part of one of the things that I do in order to ensure that these developments are being maintained and that they're meeting their proposed objective is I drive by on weekends because there's faces that tell the story. It's when you drive by and you see the decorations on the Halloween decorations or the Christmas decorations on the decks, on the porches, in the windows, and you see the smile on the people's faces. You see the properties being maintained and cleaned during the weekend when supposedly the ground staff and the maintenance technician is off, like most people are who work Monday through Friday, but you see the property still being maintained. I get to see the families there. I've not approached anybody, unlike on the other one of the other developments, because I don't know folks who live in that particular development, as well as I know some of the folks who live in a very similar development. But again, part of my monitoring goes beyond just looking at the numbers, right? It's the human story. How are people reacting? Do they look happy? Is the place being maintained? Do people feel comfortable? And based on my read, I would have to say that they do.
I just want to, since we have members of the development team, I want to call on, I saw him. Where did he go?
Should be Anthony or Rio.
Tony, Anthony.
I'm on.
Oh, there he goes.
Okay.
Tony, can you just tell us some of the things that you all are still trying to work on? Understandably, how it's been difficult trying to secure some tenants in this still in this pandemic era in our marketplace. But please feel free just to provide some context as to the things that you're still looking to do.
Sure. Thank you all for your time this evening, and we really appreciate your having it to hear about our project and try and help us out on the tax abatement side of things. So to Councilman Gale's request, we have continuously looked at commercial retail tenants. We do have a letter of intent with a restaurateur, which we've had for quite some time now. That's still in play. We are looking at some programmatic stuff with the University of Hartford. COVID has obviously put dampened the sales here. A lot of folks have pull back on expanding their programs and things of that nature at the moment until they understand how to really work through the pandemic. So I think we're kind of rounding out the corner there, and things are going to start loosening up again. We are going to continue to look for a grocer. It's difficult. Most of the major grocery chains aren't looking to expand at the moment. They don't have an urban footprint design that really works. So we're continuously looking for grocer operators that would be a fit and that can bring, fresh food options to the area. So those are really the three main pieces that we're looking at the current moment. And then there'll also be some commercial space for smaller businesses, boutique shops, so it's that sort of thing when we get to that point. I can appreciate your comment about the dirt along Albany Avenue. I'm tired of looking at it myself.
Thank you, Tony.
Mr. Majority Leader, I don't know whether you can hear me. This is Sandy Cloud.
Yes, sir. I hear you, sir.
And I want to echo what Anthony Ellis of the Cloud Company has indicated. He has expressed exactly where we are. We're very excited about reopening some conversations with potential major commercial tenants in response to Councilman Gale's inquiry, which is a legitimate inquiry. As all of you know, the pandemic really put a damper on any serious discussions that we had been having over the last, before the pandemic in 2018, 2019. And we, now that we are through the most challenging part of the pandemic, at least we believe so at the point we are, as Anthony has suggested, reopening conversations that are, some are beginning, some are fruitful. We know what the community would like to see, and we believe that we have an opportunity to continue beyond the residential, this being a gateway project for commercial engagement as well. And so you have our commitment that we're going to continue to try to do our very best to make this an extraordinary transformational project that we all see unfolding. And thank you for your support, all of you as members of council.
Thank you very much for your comments. Well said. Okay, if there's no other questions, the chair will entertain a motion.
Move to send this back to council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
Motion has been made by Councilman Gale, second by Councilwoman Surgeon, to move back to council with a favorable recommendation. Is there any questions on the motion on the floor? Council President Rosado.
Yes, I'd like to recuse myself since I work for the Hartford Housing Authority.
Okay, duly noted.
Agenda item. Thank you.
Councilman Gale.
I just want to add to that motion that it's with commendations to Tone Nelson.
Thank you, Councilman Gale.
I second that.
Duly noted. Let the record reflect Councilman Gale's comments. All right. Any other discussion on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 All right. Any abstentions? Any no abstentions, no nays. There's one recusal. The ayes have it. This motion is passed with favorable recommendation back to council for our next meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, members of the committee.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Same to you. The last item, which was which reflects the added item, which is item 2.6. Mayor Brunner with a company resolution authorizing the grand lease of 270, 292, and 298 Albany Avenue and 10 Green Street to Andalib Enterprises LLC, which had an 824 review in a public hearing on December 19th at 7 p.m. Mr. Diaz.
Hello.
How you doing?
Councilman, good. How you doing, sir?
Good, sir. You have the floor.
I have the floor. Okay, so we put a little presentation together. So let me see if I can share the screen. Okay. Can everyone see it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So the city has there are 4 properties that are city owned. I think most of them have been in our portfolio since 2014. They're between they're on Albany Avenue between Center Street and Green Street. And there are in, as you can see, in horrible condition. The 270 building on, which is the one in the corner, and the Linda Nails building, which caught fire, and then we have the one, the half on the baby. So the city is we're under way to get this fire damaged building demolished. We got the approval to the historic commission. We went through our on-call process. We're actually going through the disconnect with the utilities to get this going. So hopefully in the next month or two, this will be demolished. So this is a public-private partnership with transformer underutilized city-owned parcels, and including the rehab, which is the most important component of the historic structure on 270 Albany Avenue, which has been labeled on the city's most endangered historic properties. So like I said, there's 4 city-owned properties on the lot. The project would accommodate 3,100 square feet of new commercial opportunities and approximately 40 new residential units into the neighborhood. And that's a site plan, so you can see there's going to be parking in the rear of the building, and this is like a first floor layout of the project. So like I said, in regards to the project is going to rehab the 270 Albany Avenue. That's going to have 8 residential units, approximately 4,100 square feet. And then on the ground level on the front, 1,282 square feet of commercial space. On the other properties, you're looking at 32 residential units, which is approximately 16,000 square feet, and then an additional 1,800 square feet of commercial space. This is with the developer. We're asking to put a development agreement and a ground lease, 49-year ground lease with the option to extend. Asking for a 90-month due diligence period with an additional 9-month extension. We have the performance requirements in this project. It's going to be 70% affordable housing requirements with AMI starting, I believe, at 30. So the total cost of the project is approximately $10.7 million, and we're adding the typical city of Hartford requirements with the 50% MWBE, 30% Hartford residency, and then the 15% with the trade workers, like we do with most of the actually with all the projects that we push through. So the developer is going to have they're going to finance this using a State Department of Housing money, federal LIHTC, state historic credits, their own developer equity, and CHFA loan. And then like I said, we're asking for a 49-year lease. So they're going to have a pilot schedule. So from years 1 to 3, the construction stabilization period at 0%. Then we gradually move that up to after year 15, they're going to be at 8.5%, based on gross revenue, which gets some equivalent to what the residential tax rate would be. So I want to introduce Ace Andalib, if he's still on the call.
Yeah, I'm here. How you doing?
Okay. Hey, how's it
Hi,
going?
everyone.
Hey. So just want to introduce you, and maybe you can talk about some of the projects, because I know you have a presence, especially on several projects that you worked on Albany Avenue.
Sure. Does anybody have any questions about the existing project? Or
Yes, I do. Well, you know what? Since this is Councilwoman Surgeon's neighborhood, I'll let her go first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have to, yeah. Being neighbors to the Blue Hills development, which has certainly enhanced, the neighborhood. Mr. Hayes has done a fabulous job on the Weaver building, which you have gone on a tour on. He's done a really good job in the renovation of the building, and his selection of people who want to live there. That was very important to the neighborhood to make sure that he had a good selection when he chooses his renters there. So I have not seen Vine Street area as yet, but I do know in Upper Albany, he's done a great job and the renovation of especially the Weaver building, which I've seen. I'm not sure if you started in the Tinker building as yet, Mr. Ace. And I've certainly gone down to Magnolia building further down on Albany Avenue. He has designed the commercial area. It's very appealing, especially after the city of Connecticut have put $30+ million in the streetscape in Albany Avenue. And so his commercial area is really a welcome addition to make that streetscape really partnership with each other and make it a welcome neighborhood. So those are the great things I've seen him have done in Upper Albany.
thank you very much.
You're welcome. But Mr. Chair, can I have my question?
Yes, you may.
Great, thank you. Couple of things, Mr. Diaz. Did you guys bring this to the NRZ in Clay Arsenal?
Did we? No, we did not on our own.
Okay, so Mr. Hayes, have you gone and spoke to the neighborhood? One of the couple of things, I am a strong believer in the NRZ in every one neighborhood, that they do have a say in what kind of economic development we have in the neighborhood. So have you spoken with the NRZs in Clay Arsenal?
I have spoken to the stakeholders in the neighborhood. Plenty of them are aware of this plan. They've seen it, and I've spoken to them in person about this. But
So
I have not gone to Clay Arsenal group.
So one of the things I always ask is that, you get an approval. I think the city of Hartford has done a great job in the redevelopment area of Clay Arsenal. I call it down by the Firestone area, the tunnel, and got buy-in from all the neighborhood as they redevelop there. And again, as a strong proponent of the NRZ and being totally involved in wanting to see what the neighborhood looks like, I would love to see if you could get a letter for recommendation from the NRZ before I can vote on this project. Because again, if I'm going to support the NRZs being involved in their neighborhood, that's important for me, especially when you're doing, 40 residential, is it going to be 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms? That neighborhood certainly would give you some ideas of how they would like to recommend the structure of the residential units.
Yeah, so I did preliminarily discuss this with the stakeholders in the neighborhood. Their input was taken into consideration. There was a couple of meetings about it. So there were changes made to this based on what was advised at those meetings. Components of 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, parking situation, things like those were addressed based on the feedback and recommendation we got from the stakeholders in the neighborhood.
Okay. So you do, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms. Howard.
Councilman Surgeon, I would also add, I think part of the basis here was that because this property was part of the overall, much like Arrowhead, part of the Arrowhead Gateway plan, okay. I think that was part of the sentiment as to why we didn't go in that direction. But I think to the developer's point that he has had some preliminary conversations, and as such, if the council is looking to have at a minimum a letter of support prior to the council approval, I do believe that's something that the developer could get from the NRC as a result of that.
Through you, Ms. Howard, I want to tell you that you guys did a fabulous job. The city of Hartford did a great job with the development of the Arrowhead area and the total involvement of the community and the feedback of what was done. Certainly show the partnership with the city of Hartford and the residents of the neighborhood. So I want to commend Development Service in getting that accomplished. Very proud of you guys.
Thank you.
Just one last question, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
So, Mr. Diaz, I look at the financing and it says here there's some senior loan financing. So how much of the 40 apartments or residential units will be senior?
No, that's a bank loan. Sorry, not senior for senior residents, not as age.
Oh,
sorry, the loan.
Okay, well, yeah, but still, my question is, how much of these residential units are going to be set aside for the seniors or elderly, or you know, just as a question? Or will there be any?
I don't think we set any age restrictions on any of the apartments. I know it's there are, like I said, there's 70% for affordable requirements, but not age restricted.
Okay. And just one last question, Mr. Chen, I promise I'll stop. What's the difference between the pilot and when we did the housing development? It was you know, the tax, but it was
taxes.
Yeah.
Well, when we do a pilot, it's a payment in lieu of taxes. Well, yeah. It says we're doing a ground lease. This is still going to be, the city still owns the land. So they'll make payments instead of being liable for taxes. And then, but we structured it to what would be, like I said, after year 15, it would be comparable to what the residential tax rate would be.
Okay, thanks for that explanation.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilman LeBron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I want to thank the development as, you know, that particular property on Center and Albany. I have family that currently lives in Fairmont, so that's like the backyard. Mm-hmm. And to see that improved after so many years is a blessing and something that I'm looking forward to. But also with all the projects all the way down and this intentional investment in neighborhoods. I do have a question, and I'm not sure if it's for you, Director Howard, or for Ace. I believe somewhere along the properties, I think it may be the Tinker Building or somewhere along that line, there was some interface with some dollars that, or interaction with some dollars that went through Imagineers and then went back. I don't know what the specified amount was, but it had to do with the development of properties. And so I got a message about a week ago from a constituent regarding that. And if you could just elaborate as to, number one, if that did happen, and number two, as to why that did happen.
Go ahead, Aaron.
I was going to say, I do believe this is an answer for you to the developer.
Sure. There's the Weaver Building. We did that, and there were some funds given to us from the city for the rehab of the apartments over there. Weaver Building, it's the building at the corner of Woodland and Albany. It's 6 retail stores and 18 residential units above. All the residential units were gutted. we rehabbed the whole building, and out of the 18 units, 8 units were allocated to the project-based voucher program, and to assist with the rehab of the project is why the funds were appropriated.
So my understanding is that monies were given to Imagineers, and then money was given back, or did Imagineers keep the money? Just the level, yeah.
We just dealt with the city. We did not deal with Imagineers.
So there was no interaction between your organization and Imagineers for that property?
Only interaction for the Imagineers was when we applied for the project-based vouchers, and we got approved initially for the project-based vouchers. And now when the project is finished, when we move the residents in, we're going to be working with Imagineers to put the residents in that are on their waiting list of tenants.
Director Howard, do you have any knowledge of the transactions that happened? And through you, Mr. Chair, I apologize. Do you have any knowledge of the transactions that happened between Imagineers and the city? It doesn't look like Mr. Ace had any interactions with Imagineers. Is this just a mystery? Is this misinformation? Was there no interaction between the city and this property and Imagineers?
Thank you, Councilman. And I actually don't know. I think this question is better posed for Brian Matthews in the housing department. And if Tone might have been able to answer if he was still here, but I do know that we have a relationship with Imagineers. High level, I can tell you that. I think real specific questions as to that relationship and any investments or work that we've done in collaboration with them would be better served to ask of Brian Matthews.
I'm just going to.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, Councilman. I just want to interject because I just believe, and I could be wrong, that you have a specific question that I think requires a separate meeting
sure.
on what we have before us, which is this project. And I totally, understand what your question is, but I just want to stick to this here.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I guess one of the things is that we're looking to approve this today, and I would just like the question answered. If it has nothing to do with Mr. Ace, then that's fine. It's just I would feel much more comfortable knowing what that transactional relationship was. It doesn't sound like it was with him, so you're right. Maybe it's a conversation that needs to happen between ourselves and the city. I just don't feel really comfortable right now not having that solidified and confident in voting without having that question answered. I hope you respectfully, Mr. Chair.
No, I totally understand, your question. I know my interaction with the housing division for development services, there is a person designated to deal with Section 8, whether it's Imagineers or Hartford Housing Authority or other entities that manage Section 8. So I think that, as Aaron said, that maybe Director Matthews, Brian Matthews, that is, can add a little bit more color to answering your questions regarding that.
Thank you. I'll follow up with him.
Any questions regarding the presentation? Yes, Councilman Gale.
Not a question so much as a follow-up for Councilwoman Surgeon's question about pilot versus tax abatement. And my understanding is that under the law, when we're giving a tax abatement to any property owner, we're limited to no more than, I think, 20 years is the absolute outside maximum that we can provide. But in this case, we own the land, so we're not giving them a tax abatement. We're essentially setting up a rent payment for 50 years, and so calling it a pilot. And I want to thank administration and applaud them for making this a percentage agreement. One of the things that other council members may or may not know that is kind of bugged me over the years is the fact that Hartford 21 is built with a similar agreement. And I think it's a 50-year pilot, and it's a fixed dollar amount. So I don't know, I forget exactly what it is, but I don't think it represents anywhere near what we should be getting in taxes on that particular property. So it behooves all of us at council to stay away from fixed pilot agreements and to stay with things as has been presented tonight with these percentage things, so that as the economy changes, we, the city, aren't holding the bag.
Mm-hmm.
If I may, Chair, through you, Councilman Gale, and also kind of answer your question related to the previous application, we actually do a lot of underwriting on these deals, especially since, I mean, we always do it on development side, but this is a affordable housing deal. And so it's really important that we make sure that the numbers work and from a lender perspective. So we actually make sure that when we base out any gross revenue, whether it's through a pilot payment or whether it is a tax fixing agreement, we always try to make that tax revenue increase so that there isn't a huge jump in whether it's year 10 to 11 or year 15 to 16 in order to make sure that the project is still sustainable. And so in this particular scenario, we did build it up and found a gross revenue percentage that meets that residential tax. So what we would be getting if this was regularly taxed as a residential non-city owned property, we made sure to build it up to that number, but we do that to make sure these deals work and that we don't have issues with lenders going forward.
Thank you for that. I will say the good thing is none of us were around when that Hartford 21 deal
I wonder what to say that too
went down. That was prior to our time, but I do want to thank the administration's creativity on this, just to make sure we're just not giving something away and we're not going to receive anything in return. Going back to the properties alongside corner of Albany and Center Street, regarding how is it determined how many Section 8 vouchers will be accepted for these properties?
The way we put it together, 70% of the units are going to be affordable housing.
Okay, so the affordable housing piece, just for clarification, does mean it's Section 8.
Yeah.
Okay.
28 units right now are affordable.
Now, is there any type of restriction as to what units are affordable? Do you have a breakdown as to how many studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedrooms?
Yeah, there's a mix of studios, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. And again, those plans are not finalized. It's a concept. We work with the zoning, and these plans are very preliminary, and so they could change, but that's what has been proposed right now.
And since it's a corner property, where's the parking going to be? Is it going to be on the backside of these buildings off of Center Street?
So there's some parking designed in the back, and we've also spoken to some neighborhood churches that are in the vicinity to utilize their parking lots and work out an agreement with them.
Okay. Such as a agreement, I'm assuming the agreement is paid parking?
Paid parking, maintaining parking lots, things of that nature.
Okay. Councilwoman Surgeon.
Did I just see you said paid parking with affordable housing?
We would be paying the church or the whatever business, whoever we get parking from, we're going to be paying them for their parking lots.
So you wouldn't pass that on to the renters?
As of now, that's not proposed.
It's not proposed?
No.
Okay, so I'm a little bit confused. So if you have your the proposed financing, and we don't know how many, 1 bedroom or 2 bedrooms or, efficiency, how will we, but the project is supposed to be 10.7 million.
I have a I'm sorry, I have a breakdown of the units if you want.
So how is that stack working through you, Mr. Chair, to Ms. Howard?
If I may. So I think, so for clarity, I think what the developer is proposing is we have had in some scenarios where we get to the zoning process or even with historic tax credits that the number of units may change, but this proposal is based on LIHTC, CHAFA, and the lender. So he is going to have a spread on the differences of affordability. So when I see on my screen, I have a breakdown in front of me. It is 70% affordable, but there's a mix between 30% AMI, 50 AMIs, 60, 80, and 120. We have, they're all broken down in different levels. So you've got studios, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms at 30 AMI. We have some studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms at 50, and then it kind of goes up as well. So there's a mix across the board with all of the units where they increase by AMI level and certain designated 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, or studios. So if that helps. So right now, like for instance, they have at 30% AMI, they're proposing 6 units, 6 studio units. At 1 bedroom, they're proposing 3, and 2 bedroom, they're proposing 1, 2 bedroom at 30% AMI. And then those numbers increase. So studio affordable at 50%, we have 6 more at 50% AMI. At 60%, there's 1 studio. At 80%, there's 2 studios. So there is a bit of a breakdown. And if you really want to see the breakdown, I can show you. I can share my screen really quickly to kind of show you what that looks like.
Does it tell? So it tells me what the cost is or what the rental would be for a studio. It's going to be 900, 600. Does that?
For example, yeah. So like a studio affordable at 30% AMI right now, it's about 400 square feet. We're looking at the LIHTC AMI rent limit is around $591 or gross rent at $591 with a net monthly rent of about $791. So while these are all considered affordable housing, I think one of the questions that was pointed about Councilman Clark is sometimes what happens in these development deals is if you go after Section 8 vouchers, they help cover those costs to help the lender, to help the developer. So that's what you see a lot of the times, those Section 8 vouchers will go towards a 30% AMI to help cover cost. And then obviously with 30% AMI, the higher you go, when you get to like a studio for an 80% AMI, right now we're projecting again 400 square feet. That's about the LIHTC AMI rent limit is about $1,500. Gross rent is about $1,200. It's about $1,100 net monthly rent with a rental subsidy. So it's about $1,100 for an 80% AMI, and for a studio
at for 1 bedroom, or is that?
That's for studio.
That's
for a studio. Yep, and then a studio at 120 AMI. To Tone's point, that's what we typically consider the market. Here we're showing about $1,300 for net monthly rent.
For a studio.
Yep. So your highest rent for this development would be a 2-bedroom affordable unit at 120 AMI would be at about $1,750 a month for net monthly rent, with your lowest net monthly rent being generated by the studio at 30% AMI with a net monthly rent of about $791.
Wow.
Mr. Chair, I have a question, or perhaps through you a clarification, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
So, Aaron, can you clarify something for me? And maybe I have incorrect information, but when we passed the tax abatement deal for the Pennant, then it was agreed upon that it was going to be 20% affordable, but yet it's 10% affordable now. Could you tell us how that happened?
For the Dono project?
Yes.
So I think the way the agreement was written, and this is off my memory, and I know Howard's on the call too, so he might be able to help.
Sure.
We did try to push for 20% affordability on that project, subject to receiving a certain amount of home funds and dollars in order not to trip Davis-Bacon and some other things. So if it's at 10% now, it had to do with the available funding in order to get to the 20% AMI. And I believe that the rest of the contracts are written that way in the development agreement. So the goal is to get 20% if we can, as long as there's funding to support that. Home funds, whatever, state home funds, whatever we can obtain. Otherwise, the minimum, absolute minimum is 10%. And I believe that's how that was negotiated. This deal is very different. This deal is coming in telling us they're building a 70% affordable deal, and there's only 30% market on this particular deal.
Okay, so there's no way, based on the way this deal is written, us passing this tax abatement, that same scenario, because XY funds wouldn't be delivered, that we might have a situation like the pennant. You're saying that based on how the deal is written right now, that will not happen?
So I think
with tax abatements, we take everything into consideration.
Sure. So a couple things. The pennant is also a development agreement. It's another ground lease development agreement. It was primarily a market rate deal. The more market rate you go, the larger the gaps are in financing as such. So one of the things you'll see in a lot of the downtown deals would be pushing for 80% market and about 20% affordability in our downtown developments. That deal didn't have LIHTC funding or CHAFA funding. It didn't have the same sources of funds that allow for developers to obtain funding to do these types of developments. In this particular deal, this developer is going after LIHTC funding and CHAFA funding, which has affordable requirements and offers more funding to actually do these developments, less than you'd get from a conventional financing, per se, like in downtown, right? And so the reason this one can be stronger in affordability is because of the sources of funding that's helping this deal. Trying to get a full deal at 70% affordable here without any like CHAFA or anything would be really hard to make this development deal work, if I'm explaining that correctly. It really does depend on the source of funding.
Thank you. Very clear answer. Thank you. I'm all set, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam President. Councilwoman Surgeon, I don't know, were you all set with your questions?
Put it. I'm good. I will. Got to go back to my memory and figure what my question was going to be before I was interrupted. So I got to go back and figure. I can't remember what my question was, what my trend of thought was at the time.
Okay,
so give me a minute. Go ahead.
I'll give you a minute. I'll go to Councilman LeBron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Ace, does Andaleep Enterprises have a website?
No, it does not right now.
Ms. Howard, in terms of some of the, I'm just looking up some of the affordable housing laws and policies, and I'll email this to you. Isn't it a requirement to have pertinent information or business information and having a website? For example, even with our small Unity grants, the folks that apply for Unity grants, even in the amount of $5,000, one of the requirements is having a website. And so is there any connection between having affordable housing and having website as a form of transparent communication for the tenants?
I am not aware of any of our requirements as such. I can't speak to, sometimes those types of requirements, well, most times those requirements are based on the funding source. So the Unity grants, for example, that was something I believe that we did. So we made a requirement of that because we're the funder of that program, right? We aren't putting any city dollars or any investment into this other than doing the ground lease and the pilot. So on my end, I am not aware of anything that would require that, and I have never had to require that in any of our development deals. That does not mean that under the LIHTC program or under CHAFA, they may be required to do something like that. And I'd have to actually ask Ace to know if he's aware of anything, if the lender or who the source of funding is that would require it. But on our end, I do not have a.
Yeah, I mean, so under Housing Rights and Tenants Housing Association, so let me just give you a quick background, and through you, Mr. Chair. So under Tenants Rights and Tenants Housing Association, and given my background in working with tenants for over 20 years through social work and human services, The Connecticut laws in terms of tenants housing associations, you have to be able to contact folks. And so one of the forms of communication is website, and that is generally used, particularly more recently. And so it is an avenue that is not privy to the potential tenants and the potential residents of any property. And so that's one less communication opportunity for these tenants. And it makes it that much more, particularly when we're dealing with housing and affordable housing. And not saying Mr. Ace has anything to do with this, but as with the current constraints that we see with housing and folks that are developing housing, when tenants came to City Hall, one of the major issues was being able to connect with folks. And so having a website is, I believe, if it's not required, it's definitely highly suggested.
So thank you for that. I actually think that's more clear to me. I as a developer, right? So as a developer right now, Andalib Enterprises probably, as Ace says, doesn't have a website because he's acting on behalf of his development organization. I'm not aware of any residential complex that is built that does not eventually build their own website, because he's going to need to attract tenants as well. And I do believe, and Ace, if you don't mind jumping in, I do believe that for good business practice, he needs to have a website to be able to market the property, to generate tenants and that sort of thing. So the question is if there will be a straight line of communication in some way between tenant and landlord. I do believe that naturally has to happen anyways. But Ace, I don't know if you want to speak to that, because it's a little different than tying it as a requirement to the funding source. But I would think that if you have a residential complex and you're renting out your uses, your point is well made, Commissioner LeBron.
Yeah, sure. And thank you. And yeah, that's a very good point about communication. That's extremely important. So to answer your question, yeah, we don't have a website for this project yet, but yeah, we do plan on having a website where tenants can see and get in touch with us. But just so as it is right now, we manage a lot of existing tenants in Hartford, and we have a system for them to get in touch with us. They actually have access to a portal that we provide them. It's a landlord tenant portal that they have access to, and it's a proper ticketing system where they can get in touch with us 24/7. And so we do have a management system that provides tenants a way to get in touch with us, submit pictures to us online, get in touch with us at any point or time given, regardless, to let us know what their issues are. As far as having a website for the company, it's under construction, and as we move further along with the project, we'll have something for this project.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Are you finished, Mr. Councilman LeBron?
I believe he is.
Yes, Councilwoman Surgeon, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chair?
Yes, Councilwoman Surgeon.
I remember when the city was working with the developer from Arrowhead. I know they met several times with the Clear Arsenal NRZ. I would like to see the developer go to the NRZ and get a little support for what they're trying to, for this project, just like how Arrowhead project did. I, as again, a proponent of the NRZ and strengthening the NRZ, I'm not sure, is there a rush on this that it has to be voted upon tonight, Ms. Howard, or, that would give them, time to go to the NRZ to get, their approval and recommendation or support?
So I will answer this as I think obviously the administration would love to move these types of projects forward. However, I do believe that there is wiggle room there. I don't think there's any immediate rush. So if that is something that council would like, I think it's a reasonable ask, and I think it's something that we can do. But like I said, I do know the administration would like to move this forward as soon as the administration can.
And I think Councilman LeBron also had a couple of questions, which I think he wants to get answered too. Is that correct, Councilman LeBron?
You are correct, Councilwoman, sir.
Okay. So through you, Mr. Chair, can
Madam,
I'm sorry, sir. So that's just my opinion. So
no, I got you. I just before you, because I feel the direction that you're getting ready to go. I didn't know if Councilman Gale had his hand raised. I don't know if he had a question.
I'm so sorry. I apologize, Councilman Gale.
No, not a problem. It's just to add to the debate a tad to Councilman LeBron's second point about landlord communication with tenants. It seems to me that subject is more appropriate for this body to take up in terms of looking at our entire housing code and something that, as opposed to doing it on a one-off basis, if this is something that we feel is, its time is right, then, I think it's, and it sounds to me like it is something whose time is potentially right. So maybe we should take another look at the housing code on that, and understanding where Councilwoman Surgeon was headed. I'm imagining we're going to entertain a motion to postpone this to the next meeting, but I'm wondering if we can postpone it sort of tentatively favorably, just so we have a sense that if in fact they get the letter from the NRZ, and maybe get it before we have the next meeting of this body, we could agree to then discharge it from committee because we've already voted on it favorably, if you get my drift.
So that is just to be clear, that is a motion to postpone with a underlining favorable recommendation, albeit that the developer does the required outreach as what has been requested by this body, which is to do outreach into the NRZs. Did I get you?
Yes, that would be it. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to defer to Councilwoman Surgeon, who has more knowledgeable of when the NRZs meet.
I think they have missed the meeting for January. I think they meet the first week or two in February. That'll be after our January's council meeting. But one of the things through you, Mr. Chair, and to Ms. Howard and to Ace, I remembered when our head and what is the Latino gentleman's name? Can't remember his name. Who did the
Betancourt?
Mr. Betancourt. I remember so many times how he went to the Clay Arsenal and, talk with them, solicit their support. And it was over several months of communicating along with the city doing its development project for that Firestone area. I really would like to get some more feedback. I know this item was on our public hearing, and so that was opportunity was given for communication, but I would really like to see have the developer go to the NRC, make their presentation. I think missing one council meeting and getting it back on the agenda for our February's meeting should not be a hold up to get this done.
So there's a motion already on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Councilman Clark, I know there's a motion in a second, but could I have clarification on Councilman Gale's motion again, please?
Yes, you may. So motion's been made, properly second. Any discussion? Now, Councilman Gale, can you just clarify your motion?
Yeah, sure. To Councilwoman Surgeon's point, it's not likely this is going to be ready for the last council meeting in January, but it could be ready for the first council meeting in February. It's conceivable that the NRZ meets before that, but this body won't meet before that because we're the third Monday. And so the motion simply says that we're going to postpone it in committee, but we're saying that we're favorable towards it on the assumption that they come up with a letter from the NRZ, a support letter from the NRZ. And I make the motion solely for the purpose of should that occur, we could discharge it from committee for the first council meeting in February and not wait for the then the OMBGA meeting, which would be the third Monday, and then it would get on to maybe not even the last meeting in February, might be first meeting in March. I don't know, but that's the intent of the motion.
I agree with you, Councilman Gale, because I believe the Clay Arsenal meets the first week before our council meeting, which is the 13th of February.
Okay, Councilman LeBron.
So we're in discussion. So Councilman Gale, respectfully, and Councilwoman Surgeon,
Yes,
I'll go along with your motion, but I did have other questions that I wanted it to be answered, not just solely the NRZ. I respect the NRZ, and any developer in any neighborhood, it would behoove them to make sure that they've checked in with them. With that being said, things happen, and meetings get canceled all the time, those type of things. So I would say, if it isn't a rush on this item, why don't we just defer and make a motion to just revisit this at next month meeting? Only God is 100%. NRZs, although meet regularly, things happen. And just wanted to make sure that we're following through on that, and also allows us the time to answer those other questions.
Councilman Clark, if I may I ask a question of the developer just quickly, just to confirm?
Go right ahead, yes.
So one of the questions that's been posed to me, and I just want to make sure, Ace, I am aware that you have already started your process with your financing and your funding. I want to just make sure that this delay, well, not a delay, but if you're going to have any issues on the financing side, if you believe that we're looking at probably an approval sometime in February, that's probably safe to say, probably the second meeting in February, if we wait until the next OMBGA meeting, and just want to make sure that that's not going to cause any finance issues on your end.
No, it should be, I guess that's fine. We can live with that to satisfy everybody's questions that they may have over here.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to confirm with the developer so everyone was aware.
And so, Councilman LeBron, were you?
No, so there wasn't a motion. It was the opportunity to discussion on, through you, Mr. Chair, opportunity to discuss, Councilman Gale's motion. So I know that that's on the table.
Okay. I think we all are basically saying the same thing as what we would like to see and how we would like to proceed, which is a timeline really has been set by sometime towards the end of next month, depending on what that outreach looks like and the feedback from the NRZ, if I understand everybody correctly. Yes?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right. So a motion has been made by Councilman Gale, has been seconded by Councilwoman Surgeon. Let the record reflect what we have already been discussing, because I'm not going to repeat all that again. Get it mixed up. All in favor of postponing this item indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions?
And Mr. Chair, I think it was Councilwoman Hercules who actually seconded the motion.
Councilwoman Hercules seconded. Thank you, Councilwoman Hercules. Thank you, Councilman Gale, for the clarification. This item is postponed until the next council meeting. And Mr. Ace, I would recommend that you get in contact with either Ms. Howard's office or Councilwoman Surgeon's office, just to make sure that you're touching bases with the proper NRZs and other stakeholders that you might have not touched base with, so that everyone that is surrounding this development project in the community will have the opportunity to hear and see your presentation and provide you with some feedback and commentary.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, sir. Seeing that there's no other business to discuss on this agenda, this has been a very long and productive OMBGA meeting. We are now adjourned. Thank you very much. Thank you to all those that have are viewing us. We wish you the best. Be safe, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night. Thank you all.
Mm-hmm.
Good night.